Okay, let's crack on. I think most people have joined now. So welcome to this Data Lab community event in collaboration with the Data Lab Academy. And we're here today to explore technical questions in data and AI and how to put your best foot forward at interview. For those that don't know, so the Data Lab Academy supports students across Scotland to study data-related MSc and MSci courses. We offer help with tuition fees, as well as a targeted program of events and workshops around employability, design thinking, ethics in data and AI, and the opportunity to apply for industrial placement as well. And the Data Lab community was created in June 2021 to enable data and AI professionals and enthusiasts to connect, collaborate, learn, and grow. And it's now up to almost 4,000, well, over 4,000 members. And the Data Lab community is the place to be if you want to expand your network and share ideas and experiences with data professionals and enthusiasts. So if you've not signed up, you can join for free today just by scanning this QR code. And today, it's free to sign up. There's loads of great stuff on there. There's a mentorship program, loads of different forums. You can ask questions, share projects you're working on. We have a jobs board as well, and a really great community newsletter. So it's really worth signing up if you're, particularly if you're just getting started on your journey in data science and AI, because there's loads of great resources up there. Just so everyone's aware, we're recording the webinar today, and so you will receive the summary in a few days via email. So if you miss anything, don't worry. If you have to run off and answer the door, you can always catch up via that. And we're also taking questions on the Q&A feature. So if, whilst we're going along, there's any questions that crop up, anything you'd like to ask the panel, please just throw it into the Q&A, and we'll either try and do it as we go along, or we'll leave 15 minutes at the end for answering those questions. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please, anything, just ask. So this event forms part of our employability series aimed at helping you navigate the industry as you take your first steps towards becoming a data or AI professional. And this panel aims to provide insights and share knowledge from data professionals currently working in the sector on how to master the technical interview. So if you're considering a career in the tech industry, it's important to know that a technical interview is often very different from other traditional job interviews. They typically include behavioral questions, situational questions, and technical problem-solving questions. Knowing the types of questions to expect during a technical interview can help you prepare your answers carefully to showcase your skills and experience. So during this panel, we'll discuss the most common interview questions asked during a technical interview. What does a good response look like to those questions, and how can you prepare for it? What specific organizations ask for during their process, and what they're looking for particularly. So we'll take insight directly from our panel, and top tips to help you stand out during your interview and really showcase your skills and put your best foot forward. So we're very lucky to have 3 data professionals here today on our panel, and I'll invite them to share their experience. But firstly, so I'll do a quick whip round. So we have Frida Sigley, a machine learning engineering manager from Weights and Biases. We've got Rashna Patel, who's a lead data scientist at Valid Insight by the BioScript Group, and Tom Lowe, who's a data scientist here at the Data Lab. So I'll invite them all to introduce themselves, talk about the organizations they work for, and what they're up to at the minute. So Frida, can I come to you first?
Sure. So I work at Weights and Biases, and we're a machine learning like platform and toolkit, and I manage the regional technical support team. So that's mostly around helping customers, so that range from NVIDIA and OpenAI and Toyota to address challenges in their machine learning workflows, and debug SaaS related or software development kit related issues that customers run into.
Great, thank you. Tom, I come to you next.
Tom, I work for the Data Lab. My main project at the moment is working in manufacturing firms, working with IoT data to create insights from sensor data mainly.
Great, thank you. And Rachna?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachna Patel. I'm a lead data scientist at BioScript Group, and I manage a team of data scientists and content specialists. We cater to mostly pharmaceutical industry, and we can be categorized as a health tech consultancy, and we deal with medical communications, regulatory writing, and market access. So the entire life cycle of drugs from clinical trials to the markets or the global markets. And because we work in the consultancy field, we mostly work with non-structured data, and NLP is basically our bread and butter. And currently we are transforming this business from a mostly manual process through a more automated data science and AI-driven service. That's me.
Great. So Rasha, I'll start with you actually, because we've been talking about placements, working together, and you actually came through the Data Lab Academy program yourself a few years ago and are now hiring students for placements. So what is it that you're looking for from the technical side of an interview when you speak to a new data scientist applying for a job?
Yeah, so we do have a different categorization depending on who we are hiring. So for placement, for example, I'm looking for conceptual clarity. And sometimes the curiosity and eagerness suffices, because if some of the students haven't been through the courses that we are looking for, is generally NLP and advanced NLP. But the basics about machine learning, for example, types of machine learning is something that I would ask for, or data transformations. When it comes to hiring junior data scientists, we have our technical interview is a take-at-home exercise. So we give a specific amount of time, we give 2 different exercises, and these exercises are very much reflective of the kind of work that you'll be involved in. So it serves 2 purposes. One, we can gauge what is the technical skill and of the person who is finishing the task, and the person themselves can gauge if this is the kind of data they would like to work in future. And also, as we know, that a problem can be solved in different ways. There is no right solution to it. So what we are interested in these technical interviews is your thought process. So why did you select a particular method? What was the logic behind it? And we ask the people to also, or applicants to also write a report, a brief report, which pretty much shows how well you can communicate. And when it comes to code, we really look for, we do specify languages because we have a priority of Python, unless it's a deep statistical analysis for which we use R. Otherwise, everything is Python. So we ask to use that language as a preference, but the code has to be well commented, and simplicity is something we value the most. I don't want to know very complicated aspects. It's just keep it very simple. So
that's really interesting to hear. Yeah. So as you say, there's no right answer there in the technical test. So how do you compare candidates who have maybe gone for different ways of approaching the problem?
So we first look for, so there are different criteria. So as I said, the first is whether the task is completed, and we give 2 tasks of different, you can say, complexity. That's one way of saying that, oh, the task was completed. Then the final output, we do give a sample of final output that this is what we're looking for. And if it matches, then it's fine. And the report itself, like what options they had, why did they choose the option they chose? The clarity in communication, as well as the code itself, the simplicity, the commenting, etc. And is their code properly as modular as it can be? We're not asking for an application. but have you created functions? And there is less duplication. So all these different things we grade for. So we're not actually looking for, say, software engineers, right? I mean, if that is a skill set you have, it's great. But as a new data scientist, we're not looking for that. But that's why we value simplicity more. So if your thought process is simple, from what the problem is, what the solution is, if the entire pipeline is very clear. And another aspect which is important for us as an organization is cross-communication. So 90% of the business is non-technical. So we need to understand what their requirements are, and we need to cater to that. So that kind of understanding is what the simplicity drives. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes. No, that's really useful. So you're really looking at sort of how they've broken down the problem and how that translates into a simplicity of code and kind of really clean code there. So there's sort of technical output and then the ability to explain that. And so do you, after the technical test, do you then use that as a basis for questioning within an interview?
Yeah, so we grade the tests, and then we have a short list of the top 5 or top 3, whichever our cutoff is, depending on the number of applicants. And then we ask further, like, why was this? Why was that? Why did you use that? And then sometimes we also take it a bit further. So this is just a hypothetical situation. Because as a business, we are in a hyperdrive of creativity. We are transforming a lot of services into delivery pipelines as well as visualization dashboards. So for us, a new way of thinking is very, very, I mean, we would value that a lot.
Excellent.
So a diversity of thought is something we gauge in in-person interviews.
Okay. And that's through questioning and sort of.
Yes, it's more like a discussion, our interviews.
Yes.
Like, this is a problem we are facing. And most of the times it's either problem that we have already solved or something that is way too much in future.
Got you. And Frida, how does that compare with how you do things at Weights and Biases?
I think in terms of, I guess the point there around cross-functional communication, I would say the things that it really resonates in terms of like being able to explain things to different audience. The other thing I would maybe kind of add to that is being able to like say what you see before going into details. So I like in our most recent round of recruiting for somebody in Europe, that I asked candidates to look at the same stack trace. So we have, in terms of process, we maybe have more of a traditional like software engineering cycle where you have like a technical take-home exercise after, and before that you have like a screening interview with the like internal like HR/onboarding team, and then that gets graded, and then you have a technical interview, and then you have interviews with people in the team, and then you have a hiring manager interview. I recently saw a post on social media of like what that looks like versus like the rest of the world as something like, it's quite a lot to go through. And I guess the first thing I ask is like when looking at like a piece of code and a stack trace, and I use the same piece of code and the same stack trace for all candidates, partly to kind of eliminate my own kind of bias in that process, is actually just what are we looking at? So like when I'm doing a screen share, like, oh, we're looking at GitHub and this is something that somebody's raised as an issue, and then here's a code snippet in the GitHub issue, and then here's the stack trace, and then I would ask, and I would say like 90% of candidates go straight into answering, and you have to kind of like I would say that rephrasing that kind of like being able to go in with that insight of like there's nothing that's too obvious to say, and actually describing what you're seeing in a very kind of sensory way is a way of like a lot of our customers are extremely clever computer scientists, and that skill of being able to like talk to that audience as well, and also understand that they're maybe very focused on a narrow problem, and sometimes a solution is about like unpacking it a little bit to like think about what we're actually looking at. And that also extends through to like, I guess, testing on like the tools and technologies. So there's the like something that we would be looking for is more of like a lot of people that apply for the role come from like a training in machine learning or data science, but actually there needs to be something over and like this is specific to like roles at Weights and Biases, but it's also a software. So like knowing the tools of the organization that you're going to work for, and thinking a little bit of like what are the tools and technologies that they're using, and what is going to break inside that. So for us, it's like a SaaS platform. So obviously a lot of bugs are actually SaaS bugs. They're not machine learning bugs. So having that strong skill in like, which has got transferable aspects, but testing also for that skill in terms of like machine learning, like frameworks now are so sophisticated that like PyTorch or TensorFlow are so abstracted that actually you don't always need to think like a software engineer. You can do a lot of stuff. Like they're already like high level APIs for a back end that's been abstracted away. And so quite often you see an error, you can Google that error and quickly find the answer. And that maybe some of the problems are more like mathematical to do with like shapes of tensors or like, and that's maybe less relevant to actually being able to read a stack trace and then trace where in a tech stack or where in the code stack that error is coming from or what package is causing that. Again, like being able to describe those things, like what package is it, where is it coming, and thinking about computers, like where's it coming from? Like, is it a input output error? Is it like an error to do with like a network? Is it a deployment related? Is it something that's to do with like cloud infrastructure? And being able to think in quite like causal reasoning, like where's this problem coming from? Types of things that like from a technical perspective, I would test for as much as like using as much as machine learning, if that makes sense. Like I think that like in order to be able to talk to a machine learning customer base, you need to have some like meaningful understanding of machine learning. But it's also like, and that's also increasing with like ChatGPT and a new kind of persona, which is more software orientated, and like this new term called prompt engineering, which didn't exist more than a year ago, really. And I mean, like either that or the people that had prompt engineering as their role title were like extremely focused academics, or now it's kind of growing into this thing of like, actually you're not training models anymore. You're trying to work out how to get the best out of those existing models, and embed them in software. So, and that's kind of where a lot of the machine learning spaces, a lot of the kind of hype and attention is going at the moment, and a lot of investment. So those skills maybe feel like more like it's an exciting time.
So that's really interesting for prompt engineering. You sort of need to, and I think that's really great advice across the board, kind of going in, taking a beat, taking a breath, sort of having a look at the problem and making sure, I think, clarifying it, right? Sort of being like, okay, this is where we're at, doing that sort of preparation pre-interview and kind of looking at the tools that are there that are going to be used for the company and sort of having that layout, preparation and knowledge, and then being able to kind of take those two things together and explore the kind of areas that you need to focus on. Is that a reasonable summary?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Nothing's too like I guess asking yourself the question, what do you see? What are you looking at? Doesn't necessarily have to be a deep, maybe that sound for everything I just said maybe makes it sound a bit scary, but actually a human made the technology and a human can break it. and a human can also fix it. And this sort of idea that some genius that's much cleverer than you is not the case. I think like often these things that break are broken because they're very rudimentary problems. Sometimes it's the opposite, like very clever people work on very narrow problems, and actually it's that more that around how things speak to each other, or like that skill of being able to like step back a little bit is like gold dust, I think.
Excellent. So at the minute, kind of from the discussion so far, we've sort of spoken, it's like sort of general things that kind of we're looking for in technical interviews in terms of how we frame a problem, how we break it down. And then there's a lot about communication as well, kind of cross-functional communication, how you explain that problem. And I know, Rashna, you spoke about kind of clean code there. Where does that stuff sort of rank versus kind of technical knowledge, things that you need to know and demonstrate that you know when you're interviewing? Tom, I might direct that at you as you haven't spoken yet.
I guess for me, when I'm sitting on panels and someone was, gave a technical task, I'd want to know the justification to why they took that particular role. And I guess it goes back to what Frida was saying, that I don't know. For example, if the task was to create a simple linear regression predictive model, how does that compare to a simple rolling average? So justify what you're doing. That's what I think is super important when I'm sort of interviewing. Is I want to understand why they made that decision. So why they did sort of what they did, rather than how they did it, is almost, for me, it's almost more important, especially now as we've got sort of LLMs that you can smash out some code to do do a random forest relatively reasonably quickly. But it's sort of, I think now we're moving to more that why did you do that? So why did you choose that particular model, or is there a way that you can prove that that's the best way, the reasoning behind what you did that. So I think that's also super important, is sort of taking a step back and being like, okay, why am I doing that? Why am I using that particular model, or why am I using, for example, AWS? Why am I using this particular service? When they're and sort of just justifying to yourself why you would use that particular thing, because I think that's really key from an interviewer point of view. I think that's sort of a really good skill to have to be able to articulate why you're using a particular method.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know, so I sort of come from a software engineering recruitment background. I don't know if this still exists and people still do this, but are there kind of technical question quizzes these days? I know they used to exist in software engineering. Sort of, you had to go through in a time limit and sort of, do you know this X, Y, Z, and I have to write code for this little bit. And we would always push back and we say that's a terrible way of kind of finding out if someone's a good software engineer. I don't know if the same thing exists in the data space or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I've definitely had, definitely had interviews where, there's three, where you've had sort of three just quick fire questions. They're usually at the start to sort of, filter out the, right at the beginning, to sort of do the mass filtering at the top, right at the beginning. But yeah, I think there's you need, technical interviews, you need to know you need to have a base level of understanding. But I think when you're actually getting to the level of having a final technical interview, you're definitely trying to look a bit beyond just the the binary answers of do you know this, do you not know this. And even if you don't know it, it's okay, I would I've been in interviews where it's my background's mainly AWS, and asked about Azure services, and it's if you don't know something, it's okay, well, this, you're gonna maybe need an ETL service to do your particular task. So I would search for services in Azure to do the ETL. And yeah, I guess still taking a step back and being like, oh, okay, actually, how would I go about doing this task? Even if I didn't know the sort of binary, yes, I know, or no, I don't know.
Yes, yeah. So as a quick sort of round the group, for that kind of initial stage of technical question and technical quizzing, what kind of things do people need to be ready to go on when they're going into an interview process? What do you need to make sure that you're prepared for in terms of those very core technical competencies, do we think?
I can make a start with it. I think when you apply for a particular job, you need to know what is the business domain and read the spec properly and prepare accordingly. Generally, at least for me, I'm not going to make a fluffy ad, right? We know exactly what we are looking for. So we will emphasize on these are the points. Yeah, it can be a mall list, but at least prepare for certain things. For example, if we say that NLP, then you can expect NLP related questions. If we have machine learning in it, then you can expect machine learning related questions. They might be basic. At least when I'm conducting interview, I'm more interested in your understanding. I am not interested in your live coding skills. And if you have done, and we also look at the CV. So I'm also interested in any projects that you have done. If you are a fresh student, then your thesis or your master's project is very important. And if you're worked somewhere, then that work. And we ask a lot on that as well. And of course, if there is an NLP element in that, then that is how we direct the interview. So it's almost like most of our interviews are very customized for the people we are interviewing for. They are not.
That's really interesting. So you, on the hiring side, you actually take quite a lot of time to prepare and kind of target what you're asking. So you're looking for that.
Time. Yeah. So we select the CVs properly. And for now, we do it ourselves. So me and the senior leadership team, we go through the CVs picked. And then there is a round of interview where we ask about the main aspects that we are looking for. This has nothing to do with take at home exercise. And only after that, we give a take at home exercise. And we use both of this to filter for our next which is our final interview.
Excellent. That's really good advice, Roshan. Thank you. And so, yeah, you're looking for people who have spent the time to tailor their preparation to your job description as you've tailored the hiring process to.
And if I can candidly share something small, like I was on the receiving end, so I was a candidate, and I did a rookie mistake that I did not look at the data that they generally work with, right? I'm not going to go into the company, but this is something which is very important. This is the biggest lesson of my life. If you know the company works on XYZ, try to figure out what kind of data they might be using. There is Kaggle data sources that you get a lot of data available everywhere. And then from the data, see what kind of different aspects you can do from that. So getting familiarized with the data is something that would have helped me.
So that's really good advice. So kind of do that preparation of looking at what the company is doing and what data they're using, and that's obviously will stand you in better stead to be able to tackle the problems that you might be asked about in interview.
Yeah.
Frida, can I come to you on that initial sort of technical basics question, but then anything you want to add?
I would say understanding the end user base of like, for us, it's particularly important because we're a SaaS company that's also in the space of like facilitating rather than doing. So we don't host models, we don't serve models. It's about facilitating the process, or facilitating the use of other technologies, or keying into those technologies, or creating pipelines. So understanding like the actual use case of the like thinking about the like actual use case, and I guess asking honestly if you see yourself like I'm quite an empathetic person, and I can see that it's a very hard thing to be applying for jobs and to go through an interview process. And also from my own experience, it's like and I would say you like, maybe this is more general advice, but using that adversity to really like hone what it is that you want to do, because the enthusiasm of like comes across. So I think even in a technical interview, like an enthusiasm for the tools, or like an enthusiasm for the technologies that you're using. And I would also say think about the whole tech stack that an organization is using, whether that's a more focused kind of traditional like machine learning tech stack, like what tools, what Python libraries are they likely to be using? If it's so for like sklearn, or is it like what's current? So if it's like deep learning, then actually probably most people are using PyTorch or PyTorch Lightning. So really familiarize yourself with that, like work out what's the actual tool, and like and then the other thing I would say, just in terms of like the other aspect I would say here is like in terms of the wider technologies of like a lot of people that I've seen come out of like conversion courses or like masters, or like focus on machine learning, is actually a lot of the tooling that you use is very important, like both in terms of like the code, but like, or is it Jupyter notebooks, or is it a script? Like, are you writing software? And the other aspect is like things like Docker, and Tom mentioned AWS, but like cloud infrastructure knowledge and deployment and Kubernetes. So like even very rudimentary skills of being able to use like knowing that you need a K8 YAML file to spin up pods to run, like where are these things going to, again, like the rudimentary of like more like in the real world, where do these things actually run, rather than like everyone loves and uses Jupyter notebooks. Like that's a core like thing that we're like a lot of people are enthusiastic about, but like what are those other things of like where do these things live in the real world? And like at some point someone might have to take your model and put it in that environment. So what does that look like? And what does the pipeline of like, how do you serialize a model, or like, and that might also come from like an enthusiasm around like I'm personally really into like edge devices, and like getting models to work in getting models to work on like single board computers. And so thinking about what that might mean, and like serial like binarizing a model, or those types of things that might also come from out of your own, like I would say, letting that enthusiasm for a technology shine. Like if you're into like Raspberry Pis or getting things to run in that, then I think that's a very strong indicator of somebody that's like really enjoys solving deep or hard problems, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That does make sense. Great. I mean, that was really helpful, kind of thinking about how you take these individual tools and sort of maybe more theoretical sort of uses that from your learning, but what does that actually look like when you put it into the real world and have to deploy it? Kind of a little bit of understanding that and doing some research into that. That's definitely really good. So we've got lots of questions in the Q&A. I was just going to ask one more question of the panel before we head to those. Well, actually, maybe two, which are sort of closely related. So obviously, lots of people here today are kind of starting out on their career as a data scientist and sort of or in the data world, and maybe a bit of quite a bit of imposter syndrome. How do you deal with that, and how do you prepare for kind of prepare for an interview with that in mind and overcome that, would you say? Anyone on the panel wants to jump in? Tom, oh no, Frida, sorry.
No, you can go, Tom.
So I guess preparing for an interview, I guess first of all, yeah, it's definitely looking at what what that company actually does. Look at the stack they're using. If they're using, for cloud servers, if they're using AWS or Azure, they're going to be naming that on the job description. So it's doing a bit of research around that. So yeah, I guess it's looking at what they're doing, looking at the job description, and then sort of like tailoring your sort of prep to that, really. I guess would be the best advice for that, because yeah, they're not going to ask questions. They're going to be wanting to employ people for their particular role, so they're not going to ask left field questions that aren't related to their stack. Is what I would say to that.
And on the basis that you've done that preparation and you feel you sort of understand it, but you get in there, sort of nerves get the better of you. Is it okay to say I don't know? How do you kind of approach that mind blank sort of scenario?
I think what you've got to realise is, I think everyone's had a bad interview. But everyone's had an interview where they've just gone, what the hell is going on? I think personally, I'd much rather someone say, "Oh yeah, I don't know that, but this is how I would tackle that problem." Say, I guess I'll use an example of, if I was asking about AWS Glue, and someone was like, "Oh, I don't know what that is." It's like, I would then say, "Okay, well, it's an ETL service. Like, why would you, why would one want to use something like that? Why would you need to?" So I guess it's like, I guess it's just knowing that, if you don't know something, that's absolutely fine, and trying to, but then, justifying why you would want to, why you would do something. And then if, I think it's very unlikely that the interviewer wouldn't guide you into a right direct, into sort of the answer that they're wanting. So yeah, so if they were not guiding you, you probably have questions on, would you, is that place right for you? From are you going to learn at that organization? Because at the end of the day, if you don't know anything, I think that if you don't know something, that's absolutely fine. But it is just the sort of the background of how you would then go to solve that problem is what I would be looking for.
Great, thanks, Tom. Does anyone have anything to add on the sort of mind blank disaster interview scenario?
Yeah, I've been through that, so I know. And I think, as both, I think the best policy is to be absolutely honest. Like, like everybody will cut you a slack. And if you really don't know, so for example, if you've used one platform but not other, you can say, okay, I wouldn't use this, but in this, I would do that. That's a good turnaround of saying, oh, I don't know that. But for whatever reason, there is a mind blank and there is no answer coming to your mind, you can just say, I'm sorry. It's fine. I mean, we have all been there.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'll move on to some of the questions in the Q&A, and yeah, hopefully we can get through them. So from anonymous attendee, we have: how much emphasis should I put on learning questions like following ones while preparing for interviews? How to invert a binary tree? What is the expected value to obtain 2 consecutive heads while flipping a coin? Thanks.
I guess I can go in there. I guess it it goes back to what I was saying, what I've been saying sort of most the hour, of just sort of understanding why you would want to, well, why would you want to invert a tree? Why would you want to why would you want to swap around some of the nodes? That's what I think would be, is important. And then then you start getting into like sort of actually really interesting questions on, oh, okay, with this, in a like a random tree, you're looking at the nodes and you're looking at the yes no answer sort of thing, and you get to you then can answer questions about, oh, okay, it's really important where these questions come in the tree and things like that. So yeah, I guess I would start under the justification of why and what I've been sort of going on about the last hour. But yeah, I do think it's important to sort of understand what why you would do something.
And then once you've kind of got to the why, if someone's struggling to answer the how, is that an issue at that kind of level, or is, I think that's what the question was sort of driving towards.
So as in, I would want, I would, if you've got that question, and you've done prep, and you've got it beforehand, definitely it's important to, to do to know how to do it. I think if you given that question beforehand and someone, and you didn't do that, it would show a lack of sort of, prep. But even if you didn't know, if you didn't sort of know how to do it, sort of thing, it would still be good to know the sort of justification of why you're doing so. Why would you want to do that?
Great, thanks, Tom.
And
then, sorry, Frida. Yeah.
I guess sorry. I guess I've got a burning sense of maybe also what the person's actually asking. I think in terms of that might be very dependent on the role that you're applying for. Like where I've seen those types of questions are actually maybe more like that's more about testing logical thinking, and like one place that tests for questions like that would be a security service, a government agency, or whereas a tech company, you're probably not going to get asked, just in terms of like a yes or no, you're probably not going to get asked a question like that. You're going to get like tools and technologies, can you use them, go, if that makes sense.
Great, that's really helpful. Sorry, Rashna, were you gonna?
No, I was just going to say I agree with Peter. Like, we would never ask those questions, so it's just not required for our business.
Great, thank you. So we have a question from Luigi. Hi, what would be your preference between these profiles? A, 100% competent data engineer/scientist who codes perfectly but lacks in soft skills and/or business sense. B, average competent technically but above average in soft skills and business sense.
I can go first. So again, this is a business domain specific question. I think for our business domain, it is very rare to get business domain expertise as well as data science AI expertise. It's extremely rare. So obviously, if there is a candidate that displays that candidate is important. But if we are hiring a junior data scientist, we are not expecting a superfluous skills, right? But between the two, just because of the nature of our business, soft skills are very important. So I would go for B.
Great. Is that sort of agreed around the panel, or is there is there a role where you're looking for I suppose someone who is super technical,
I guess
Um,
from that
go for it.
question, I hear that there's a bit around like what's the exchange value of a technical skill, and what's the like labor value to of like like what's the labor value of being able to work with other people. In terms of like an A/B, I think probably for candidates that I see, they need both. And I would say that you need to be at like and the like you need to, but you also, if you're going for the more like technical, I would ask yourself the question of what do you want. So yes, you do, like the cliche of like a coder that is like maybe a little bit less kind of attuned to those things is real, but you have to be very good on that. And that means like not just knowing one language, it means like knowing lots of programming languages. And you have like and I think that's maybe an interesting aspect of like things like GPT and like now and like Copilot. A lot of like the lower level stuff can actually be automated. So it's more around like how do you build things? Like how do you use a full tech stack? If you're going for the A person, if you're the type of person that really wants to like focus on like infrastructure or like have a really deep understanding of databases. But you need a little bit of both, I think, for any role, if that makes sense, to be successful.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're going to be working with other people, aren't you? So having the ability to kind of work through problems and explain your thinking and those type of skills is always very important. Next question. So I'm a former software developer with machine learning experience who's looking to break into a proper data science role. So it's quite interesting. So we have a few people kind of in this space. What would be the expectations for someone making that move? Would that change what you're looking for? What you would expect them to be able to do in an interview, or are we still kind of looking for the same things?
Actually, if you haven't done, or if you have no experience, so it seems like this person might be already a professional and they have some machine learning experience or machine learning projects. I think it's important to have your GitHub out there or some project description in your CV for a data science role you're applying to, because when we scan the CV, we look like, okay, they may not have worked in a data science field professionally, but they have the skills, and your project will direct us towards that and help us conduct the interview. So yeah, the overall expectations will not change, but we do need some evidence of some projects you have done on ML.
That's great. And that actually ties into another question from Leslie. So from CVs, what things are you looking for that would make you pick that person for interview over another with the same qualifications? And are there any major red flags that would make you reject people? So there, if you're kind of linking to projects and GitHub on your CV and you're applying for a data science role, then it's important to have a kind of data project on there. But are there other things that stand out?
I can go here. I guess the main thing when you're, when people are applying for a role, if they are going to be looking for, projects that have some experience with what they, with a project coming up, or like what they do. So I guess there's never going to be a red, there's not going to be a red flag, full stop. It's just going to be, does your experience match match the problems that we have now in our current business.
Great, yeah. Thanks, Tom. Any other things that you're looking for?
One more thing, I think we look at it preferably, because like if in this field everything is changing so rapidly that learning is an integral part of working. You have to learn every day. So if there is already a person who is displaying this skill all by themselves, that they have been learning say, machine learning while being a software engineer, and now they have few projects, we look at it very favorably.
Great, thanks, Rashna. So move on to the next question now. A lot of companies have a niche focus like bio and AI. Now, on the other hand, graduates usually have one side of this focus. In your interview, if you found someone that has both, this will be ideal. But if the candidate has one aspect, which aspect is more more forgiven? In other words, which skills do you think you can learn while working, and which skills are essential? I guess that's a good question.
We already have experience of data scientists that are coming from more technical background, and they are now understanding the business domain, which is the healthcare and the medical side of things. So yes, as the question said, like both of them are ideal, but you can learn. In fact, you have to learn both on the job. You cannot ignore the business domain, and you cannot ignore keeping up with your whatever technical skills they are there. So, we don't expect when we hire, we don't expect somebody to be a professional coder if they haven't been a software engineer, but we expect them to learn from their peers and to improve. So that's part of the personal growth while working, kind of a management approach.
Does anyone have, yeah?
There's a little bit of it's business like related. So I think I'm hearing there like domain. So you have what's called like ML first companies, like Stability AI or OpenAI is probably like the global like most famous example of that, where the first thing that they're doing is machine learning, or like Cohere, or like where their sole kind of purpose is like machine learning, and then the application comes second. So I think for that type of role, obviously, like the expertise in machine learning, like proper, is like, or if you wanted to go into research, then that's the focus. Whereas I think that is maybe very different for like applied, like the industry that you're going into. So for example, if you wanted to go and work for Stryker, then I think a specialism, and they're probably going to recruit for people that have specialized through a project, and that project would need to align with the business use case of like the application domain. So like medical imaging or something that's very like focused on that, if that makes sense. So that would be like the more applied ML, or like if you're going into work for like Volkswagen, or Mercedes, like in like or like AV, like autonomous vehicles, then it would need to be like applied computer vision, or so like that's where you would like application domain would be really key, if that makes sense. But maybe it depends on like the role that you're going into.
Have to do a bit of thinking from the hiring person's position as to what am I going to be expected to do as a candidate, and sort of present that as best you can. Great. Okay, so we've still got quite a few questions and not a lot of time, so we're going to have to go a bit quick fire through these. Do any of the panel members recommend any particular practice tests or online courses that students and graduates could use to practice? Anyone have any good pointers?
I mean, I guess I can only really recommend the Coursera, the sort of standard courses. I found them quite useful, certainly when learning like things for like Hadoop and things like that. But yeah.
Okie dokie. So yeah, I guess in terms of sort of particular practice tests, there are no kind of external sources that anyone uses for interview then.
But you can identify the type of data the company is going to be working on and the main objective that you can gather. And then if you want, you can take data sets and do some exercises yourself. Yeah, I think the question then is, how do you know what you have done is correct? So I think Kaggle does give you a peer feedback. So you can upload your data sets and somebody will give you a feedback on it. That's a good way to learn from the community. I don't know if Data Lab community has that option.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Could ask in the community if you've done some work and you'd like someone to check out. Someone might help you out. And this links to another question actually. Apart from Kaggle, which platforms do you recommend to check data sets?
For me, I am more into health related data sets, but I know that every kind of data set you can just Google and you'll find. The government has quite a lot of data on different things. For example, for health data, you have Public Health Scotland. You have NHS data sets that are freely available as well. And so those are good ones to look out for. Again, it really depends on what kind of data you're looking for.
I think tracing back through like research, like MNIST, or looking back, lots of universities have like data sets that are like used. So like MNIST is part of like a wider drive within the, I forget the institution that actually is responsible for like maintaining that benchmarking data set, but they have got loads of data sets. The other aspect is like papers with code and like looking, so if there's code, then they have the like, they might not have the data set there, but if the code is there, then you can find from the GitHub repository associated with a research paper, then you can find the data set that they've used. But it's a great question.
Yeah, and I guess if you're looking for like IoT, you could use the synthetic data, something like SenseGen or something like that, that I've used for current data before.
Just a quick point, what Frida mentioned, there is one called Open Data Scotland, and it has different types of data there. So that's one platform, and it is curated and everything is kept up to date.
Great, thanks for that. So we do have quite a few more questions, but we are at 1:30 now. So if people do need to leave, we will try and answer those on the chat. I will just pick one out from Terry, who's saying this session has kind of been designed towards getting a role after graduation, but wanted to ask about placements. And as a role description seems to be looking for someone who's fully polished in that area. What I would say is that we do make it very clear to companies that we speak to about placements that you're still on your master's course and that it is part of your course, and that you won't be fully polished in all areas. And as Rashna said at the beginning, quite often they're looking for kind of enthusiasm and sort of that gap and go in certain areas that maybe a bit more technical. But part two of Terry's question, is it better to stick to the stuff that you know, or is it encouraged to apply for areas which will stretch you in other ways? I thought that was quite an interesting one. I don't know what you think, Rashna. You probably need a level of knowledge in certain areas, but good to also stretch yourself.
From my own experience, I think because I have a healthcare experience before, I have actually progressed very quickly when I have applied data science aspect to it. So I think if you have any past experience or interest, it is ideal to explore and grow in that area. But if you don't have any strong inclinations, widening your net and learning all the areas and stretching yourself is a good process to evolve. So the way I see the career, this might be a very broad and binary way of looking at things, is like either you can become an expert in one area. So my career trajectory is NLP, or you can become like a consultant where you have flavors of different aspects of how data science or how data can be used and AI can be applied for various businesses. It's really up to you, your own calling.
Yeah, what you find most interesting and how you want to work. Great. Well, thank you very much to our panel, and thank you for everyone to joining and who asked questions. Any questions we didn't get round to, We can export those. We'll get some answers from the panel and we can email those around with the video catch up. I think just in summary, there's been a lot there about doing your preparation to put yourself in the best stead. So kind of finding the data sources, looking at the tooling and that wider tooling where it sits within kind of deployment and kind of problems that might be coming up. And then it's kind of those things around breaking down the problem, making sure that you kind of, think it through, take that step before you tackle anything, and then how you communicate your thinking. It's okay to say you don't know, but kind of how you work through that process and bring in your other experience to deal with it. But yeah, let's leave it there. So thanks, Ravana, once again, and hope you all have a good day.
See ya.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye now.